Before the first light of dawn brushed the sky, Oma was already awake. The air was still cold, her fingers numb as she kneaded the dough on her warm wooden table. Every loaf she baked carried her hope, the hope that one day, her son, Kojo, would have a life far beyond the dusty streets where they lived. Her neighbors pitied her. Some said she was wasting her strength, that school was a luxury for people who had money. But Oma would only smile faintly and whisper to herself, "My son will fly higher than I ever could." Each morning, she balanced her basket of fresh, warm bread on her head and walked through the town. Her feet were swollen, her clothes faded from years of sun and struggle. Yet her voice carried through the streets as she called out softly, "Fresh bread, hot bread." Kojo, our only son, always waited by the door with his schoolbooks, freshly washed and ironed. Sometimes he would beg her to rest, to let him stay home and help her sell, but she never allowed it. "Your classroom is your market," she told him, "and your pen is your strength." Years passed. Oma grew older, her back bent from carrying baskets and her hands rough from work. But every day, she counted her coins carefully, saving for Kojo's books, his fees, his future. When he finally received a scholarship to study abroad, she cried silently that night, holding his admission letter to her chest as if it were the greatest treasure in the world. The days after he left were long and lonely. She still sewed bread, not because she had to, but because it was all she knew. Each loaf she baked reminded her of him, and she would whisper prayers over the dough, "Wherever you are, my son, may your path be bright." Years turned into seasons, and Oma aged quietly. Her hair turned silver, and the world seemed slower, quieter. But one bright morning, the entire village gathered by the marketplace. A plane was flying low above the town, and people pointed and shouted in awe. Later that day, a black car stopped in front of Oma's store. She looked up, startled, as a tall man in a crisp pilot uniform stepped out. His face was hidden behind sunglasses, his presence commanding. The crowd watched as he walked straight toward her. Oma smiled politely, thinking he was a stranger wanting bread. "My son is not here," she said softly. "He is far away, but I pray for him every day." The man took off his cap and knelt before her. The crowd gasped. Tears welled in his eyes as he said, "Mama, I came home to you, my first hero." Oma froze. Her lips trembled as she reached out to touch his face. When she finally whispered, "Kojo," the years between them vanished. She pulled him into her arms, sobbing, her tears falling onto his uniform. The crowd erupted in cheers. Some wept, others smiled through their tears. The son she had once sent to school with the coins from her bread had returned, not as the poor boy she once kissed goodbye, but as a man who had flown through the skies she once dreamed of. As Kojo stood beside her, he opened the trunk of the car. Inside were boxes filled with bread, beautifully packaged, with her name printed in gold letters, Oma's bread, the taste of a mother's love. The old woman fell to her knees, overwhelmed. She had once sewed bread to keep him alive, now, he had made her name live forever. That evening, as the sun dipped low over the village, Oma sat beside her son watching the sky turn golden. She smiled quietly and said, "You have flown higher than my prayers ever reached." Kojo looked at her, his eyes soft and full of gratitude. "No, Mama," he said. "It was your prayers that carried me." And for the first time in her life, Oma rested, not from exhaustion, but from fulfillment. She had given everything she had, and received more than she ever dreamed. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.